Good morning, everybody, and thank you for joining our second session. To this session is Forging the Partnership between SROs and School Administration. You're going to get an opportunity to learn how that partnership can work and be developed. We're very thankful to have Chris Barrier here with us. He is the Chief of Police in Montgomery County, and he has over 20 years in law enforcement, 15 years as a school resource officer. He's been the past president of the Kentucky Association for School Resource Officers. I'm interested, Chris, I want to hear what you've written about because it's a published author, so I'm very curious. University of Alabama, probably some good stories to tell there too, and some experiences. Just very grateful for all of your experience and what you bring to the role of the school resource officer and your leadership. So thank you so much for presenting to us today. And for those that have just joined, Chris is looking forward to having conversation with those of you that are in this session today. So feel free to unmute and share. Just looking forward to have some dialogue. So thank you so much, Chris.
Yeah, great. Hey guys, thanks for having me this morning. And I know that you guys are doing this EdCamp thing, which is like super cool, the way you guys are able to have such interaction with so many different people around the state, and then still stay home in your districts. It's awesome that Keith and them were able to get this worked out for you all. Thankful that he invited me to come and share with you all. And, recently when we talk about post Marshall County and post Parkland and all of those kinds of things, SROs are becoming more common in schools. Particularly most recently, they're becoming more popular and prevalent in the elementary school levels. And so I know that I've been dealing with many principals around the state, and at the middle school and high school levels, they've been pretty commonplace, right? So everybody's had an SRO, they've had interaction with them, and typically those who are more seasoned in the administrative world have a knowledge of how to work and interact with those SROs. But what I'm finding throughout the state is that we're having principals who may have been at that elementary level, and they may not have any experience in dealing with SROs. And then how do you make them effective in your building? How are they resourceful to your students and your teachers as well? And so I'm really happy to talk with you all about that. But one of the things that I want to try to do with you all is I want to get some interaction from you and see what specific issues you're dealing with, maybe in your particular jurisdictions or your districts, so that we can help you all kind of navigate that water, particularly those who might be new. Or here's another example. We know that the lifespan of an SRO is 3 to 5 years. And so where we might have new SROs coming in from outside the district, maybe from the sheriff's department or from a local a city municipality, you're having to retrain an SRO every 3 to 5 years. And so that's difficult. And I say retrain because it really is like the school environment is your environment. And a lot of times they're coming into your environment and don't necessarily know the culture of your school. They don't know the climate that they're walking into. And frankly, a lot of them, and I'm being a police officer for 20 years, frankly, most of them just don't understand what you guys do in schools and how they can help you and manage that relationship and that partnership. And so much of the education that they're going to get, it comes from you all. They might not be willing necessarily up front to try to figure out what that culture is, but the truth of it is that it is your culture, and that they'll loosen up in time. And so Sean, for example, since I've got you here with me, like, tell me some things that you guys are experiencing in your district there.
Well, our district in Boyd County, we just elected a new sheriff, and we've got SROs in each of our buildings, each of the elementaries and the middle school and high school. The new sheriff's looking to revamp the SRO system and to work with us and do different things like that. I previously came from a high school where I worked with a SRO a whole lot as assistant principal at a high school before I came to, I'm an elementary principal now. Right. But when I was assistant principal at the high school, I worked with the SRO almost every day. It felt like, and it was a common thing. The elementary level, it's different. It's more of, my SRO does a great job building relationships with the kids, but that's about all we do. And so sure. We're looking to see what responsibilities and different things he can do.
Sure. So I have spent a lot of time, excuse me, looking at what the role of the SRO is at the elementary level versus the secondary level. And I've spent a lot of time just trying to figure out, you know, how to best service those ages. And what I'm learning is in the middle school and the high school level, they already have a predetermined idea of what they think the police are. You got to remember their past experiences we can't change. So when they come to the middle school and the high school with a predetermined idea or set of a mindset on what they think the police are, and you got to remember it comes from probably mom and dad got a ticket. Dad went to jail because, you know, there was a domestic in the home and that kind of thing. And so their predetermined mindset of what the police are is going to be much different than what it is at the elementary level. And so the relational piece has to be the most important thing at the elementary level, because if those situations happen at the elementary level where a police might come in and take dad to jail because there's a domestic, well, their next interaction with the police at the school, at let's say the 3rd, 4th, 5th grade level, can be a positive one. It should be a positive one, right? And so what we try to do is we try to offset whatever they're experiencing at home versus what they're experiencing in the schools, right? And so like that relational piece is probably the most important piece. Now, I would also encourage you to try to find ways to get them to do some informal type education stuff with some of the drugs and with some of the just behavioral things. And it's much more introductory at this level. So rather than, you know, do the whole DARE program at 6th, 7th, and 8th grade, I would have them come in and just talk with them about just, like I said, the introductory pieces to some of those things. So like they're going to encounter alcohol. They're going to encounter drugs probably before they get into that 5th grade level. And so we really want to start talking to them about good choices, bad choices. And like, you can use your SRO for that piece. And so that's one of the 3 pillars that an SRO does in schools is they are that educator. Okay. They're the informal counselor, and then they're the law enforcement officer. The truth of it is that, especially at that age, they're only a law enforcement officer about 20% of the time. The rest of it is going to have to be time given to those 2 other pillars, which again is going to fall into that educator as well, that role. Yeah. So I'm interested to hear from some of the other folks in the room here in the chat room, the breakout session. So somebody give me some experiences that you're having, maybe some struggles that you're even having. And again, like it's not necessarily to say that anybody's doing anything wrong, but we want to really try to work through some of the experiences that you guys are having. And I'll be completely frank, you're probably going to have some shared experiences. If you're seeing something in your district, you're probably going to be speaking to a larger group as well, because the problems persist throughout the state. So is there anybody out there that is having some experiences? Angela, I see you.
I have some questions. I'm a newer principal. This is my 2nd year, and I've been an assistant principal for several years. We have a newer SRO who covers our entire campus. All of our schools are on one campus.
Okay, so K through 12?
Yes, but they're not in the same building, but they're on one campus.
Okay.
So our SRO is newer. He's a retired police officer. So he covers basically all 4 of our buildings. Mm-hmm. I guess my question is, there's not been a lot of guidance on our end, and we just had a new sheriff come in as well. But sure, as far as what his roles and responsibilities are, and he comes to me a lot for, well, what do you want me to do? And then well, can you do this? And then, oh, well, I'm not supposed to do that. So I'm not really sure what I'm supposed to do with him, to be frank.
Sure. Yeah. So I know one of the struggles that we see with administration throughout the state a lot of times is sometimes administrators want to look at an SRO and say, oh, you know what? If I can't see that you're doing something now, I want to feel like I want to give you guys some guidance, and I want to give you some responsibilities. And a lot of times boundaries get crossed. So a lot of times a principal might say, well, I need you to be right here managing my cafeteria duties, right? And so what we try to do is we try to find ways to where SROs and school administrators can work collectively together to get some goals accomplished. So for instance, if we know that there's a problem with bathrooms and vapes, or students are gathering in certain places and we're seeing most of our fights in a particular place. So how do we work together to make sure that those problems are minimized in your school building without necessarily feeling as though you want to try to like tell that police officer where and how to go and doing that kind of thing. I'm glad that he's asking you like, hey, where do you want me to be? What do you want to try to accomplish? And so it's less about tasks. And so the relationship really needs to be less task driven and more goal oriented, if that makes sense. So sometimes it's easier to say, hey, here's what I'd like to see happen if we can work on this. And maybe you can help try to figure out maybe a plan on how to get there. So Angela, tell me about some of the things that like you would like to see happen and what maybe that police officer is communicating to you about what he can or can't do.
So we have, as I'm sure every other high school and across the state and nation, we have a huge vaping issue.
Sure.
One of the things that I was trying to work with him on is maybe to be a presence, during class change in the restrooms, pop in there here and there. I'm a female, obviously I can't go in the male restroom.
Sure.
And we have multiple restrooms. My assistant principal takes the other level upstairs. Just kind of, if you can just pop in there and be a presence, that's probably going to drive some people out of there.
Right.
But I was told that wasn't something that they were able to do because they didn't want to get accused of, watching a student or anything of that nature. So I guess I'm just not clear on, what we're allowed. I'd love to do some educational things, especially with vaping, and we have had students overdose with laced vapes here and just things like that.
All right. Okay. So you're a principal at what level?
High school, 9 through 12.
Okay. So you're a high school principal. Have you seen the MOU that your district has formed with the local agency?
Briefly, I had it for a moment.
Okay. And so what I would tell you that is when an SRO might say to you, hey, I can or can't do that, that's probably going to be more of a choice than a directive from his boss, right?
Right.
And so what I would have you to do is reach out to your school safety coordinator and say, you know what, I'd like to look at this MOU, and then maybe that you guys could have a communication or a meeting between you, the SSC, the SRO, and then their organizational management. So whoever their chief, their sheriff, their lieutenant, whatever, and then say, I understand that I can't ask him to do particular tasks, but here's what I'd like to do. I'd like to minimize our vape problem by allowing him to be a presence in our building and just do simple walkthroughs and those kinds of things. And I think that if you come at their administration that way, using your SSC and using your MOU with a clear understanding of what the goal might be, I think you're going to probably come to a place where you guys can have some better understanding of one another. So, and you're right, asking that SRO to do that is not out of the realm of possibility. Like that's not something that they should or should not feel comfortable doing. I mean, it really is like, yeah, absolutely, I can do that. And that really becomes part of their relational aspect with the students. So like every time there's a class change in our building, I'm always going to try to be out there with the kids, right? So there's 1,000 kids walking the hallway. That's 1,000 opportunities for me to try to engage students in a positive, meaningful way. And so like that's something that they should absolutely be doing. And if they're not doing those things for you, just out of sheer willingness to try to be a better SRO and be a better at engaging students, then that person might not be a really good fit for you. And that might be something that the SSC has to talk to their administration about at the police level and say, you know what, this might be something that we're going to have to revisit because we're not getting the end results that we're looking for, in our school environment. Does that make sense?
It absolutely does. Thank you very much.
Yeah. And I hope that simple guidance right there might help you all in the long term. Because like I said, the lifespan of an SRO is 3 to 5 years generally. And so during that 3 to 5 years, if you're not experiencing what you need, there's nothing wrong with the school district saying to the police administration, I thank you for the guy that you're sending us. I really like our person. We're not really necessarily getting the results that we need. Is there a possibility that we might look at some changes or maybe administratively get them to leverage them to help you all get some of those in-game results. Does that make sense?
Yes, it does.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Okay. So
Okay.
from the group, who else has some maybe some questions or experiencing some issues that we could possibly talk through this morning?
Chris, one of the things I'll share is when I came to Williamstown, I came from a middle school AP job into a principal job, and the role of the SRO at my previous school, my previous district, was different than what it is at my new school. And so just kind of that mindfulness of when, a new principal comes on board, is prioritizing the need to have a meeting to talk about the role of the SRO. And there were things that he did that were very helpful, but I facilitated those as a principal. And there are certain things that he would do to expedite the process. Like he would file JC3s to help support, like every time we had a situation that was just automatic. Yes. That wasn't automatic in my last district. So I had to kind of relearn a lot of practices that were normed in my new district that didn't exist in my previous district. So that would be kind of the other piece is, as you're talking to fellow SROs and kind of, in thinking about onboarding of principals, that would have been really helpful to me because I kind of learned it as I worked through situations. And I don't want to say it created conflict, but it created some misunderstandings because I wasn't used to the SRO functioning in that way or, communicating with the SRO about certain things. And like I said, I went from middle school where I was involved with him all the time to elementary where I should have been involved in situations that I didn't know he needed to be contacted. I was just managing, so it would have been helpful. I mean, it worked out okay and I got the support that I needed, but just kind of that mindfulness of onboarding what needs to happen.
I think too, like in a situation for Sean, where Sean's like an elementary principal, I still think that there's a need for administrators to always try to welcome your SROs to be part of your administrative meetings. So like if you have a weekly meeting on Monday or Friday or Wednesday or whatever, I always think it's good practice to involve them in those conversations. When you start talking about student learning and data-driven decisions and those kinds of things, they're probably going to check out and tune out. But when you're talking about the overall operations of your building management and your culture and that kind of thing, involve them in those conversations because I think it's going to be really helpful and beneficial to everybody if everybody's kind of on that same ship together, going down that same pathway. But sometimes administration doesn't want to bother the SRO, right? Or they don't want to bring them to the table. They only want to kind of, maybe use them when there's a law enforcement issue. But I think that if you guys are having the same problems, if you're in the same building, you're going to coexist together, like bringing them in will be helpful to you because it'll also spark conversation between the two, which again is always helpful and beneficial as well. So bring them to your meetings, talk to them about the goals that you're wanting to accomplish, talk about your climate and culture. How can they help? How can they be beneficial? How can they be a part in building that and driving that? And those are things that might help that relationship. So when you do ask them for some assistance on some things like Angela was speaking to, which again is like perfectly reasonable request for your SRO, some of bringing them to the table is going to really help in reaching some of those end goals, All right. Who's got some more questions for me here? Sarah, Lou, anybody? I might be asleep at the wheel. Okay. Sean, tell me something else, man. Like what else you got? What else are you experiencing?
That, everybody kind of hit on most of the same stuff.
Right.
We're, my assistant and I, we were talking about possibly doing like a Friday afternoon class with a small group of kids that would probably be influenced by our SRO in some way or the other, and didn't know if that's a thing that we could do or not.
Yeah. So here's a great example of what we did, Sean. One of my elementary SROs, he took some of those at-risk kids that you were talking about, and he did a leadership academy, right? He took these kids, And he said, I'm going to do a 6-week, 1 day a week, maybe 2 hours in the afternoon. You know, and he did a leadership academy. He said, so he did one on patriotism, one on etiquette. And so he would bring community members in as well. And now I tell you what, now you reach a kid in a more impactful way when you say, you know what, you're special here. I want to bring you in and I want to teach you some things that might be beneficial for you from a leadership standpoint down the road, like completely not even really relevant to you at this point in your life, but you're special. I've identified you and I want to bring you in and I want to bring some outside people in to help. And I thought that was the most amazing thing that he did that at one of our elementaries. And again, he took 12 kids, 6 weeks, 2 hours a week, and it was really good. And so like, if you take your SRO and say, hey, this is something I'd like to see done, make it happen for me. And then you know, and it's all about empowerment and that kind of thing. And like, they know what they're allowed to do and what they're not allowed to do based on their policies and procedures and those kinds of things and their MOUs. But you tell a man, you know what, hey, listen, I want you to go ahead and take these kids and let's instill some leadership in them. And here's how we're going to do this. Oh man, I think that you could take and they can run with that. And it would be so beneficial to your building, I think, because, you know, I don't know how many students you got in your building, but you take 10 kids and you change those 10 kids, your climate is going to be different in your building.
Oh, for sure. And that's something like what we were thinking about trying to do. And almost exactly. That's a great idea. I appreciate that.
I can send you, Sean, when my SRO came to me and said, hey, you know, boss, I'd like to do this. I said, absolutely, send it to me on some paper. So I'll even send you what he sent me on email and what his plans were, and it'll give him a place to start. You know, here's the classes I want to teach and the people I want to reach out to. The etiquette piece was really cool because we brought one of our ladies in town, you know, who had some experience in this, and we had a meal. Our food service ladies, you know, fixed them up a nice meal, and we taught kids, you know, proper etiquette at the table. And you know, it's funny because there's so many people who don't have, you know, simple things like that, and they just don't have that experience, right? And but it was good because, you know, here again, your administration in your building participating with your SRO, working with kids, developing long-term meaningful relationships. Man, what a sauce that is, right?
Chris, what if you find yourself in a situation where your SRO doesn't want to be the teacher, like doesn't want to do some of those things? Because I've worked with some that were a bit resistant to kind of serving in that role. So do you have some suggestions or strategies to try to get them on board?
You want to know what the truth of it is it's not so much that they don't want to teach. Every experience that I've ever had with that has been, Carrie, to be completely frank about it, they're uncomfortable in that situation. They got into law enforcement to be a police officer. And I was like, man, I've got to sit in front of 30 kids and teach them a class on vaping or alcohol or drugs. And it's just not comfortable for them. And so what we have to try to find a way, and even like the student teachers who come to you, they're nervous, but they're setting out in their life to be teachers. So SROs, like it really and truly, it's a comfort piece for them. We have to find a way to make them comfortable in that setting. And it's not normal for them. So you got to remember where these guys are coming from. So they're coming from a patrol type situation, right? So they've been working third shift. They're answering calls, domestics, robberies, thefts, all those things. And they're like, hey, now you're going to be an SRO and you're going to sit in front of 30 kids and talk to them about drugs and alcohol. And they're like, that's just not comfortable for me. And so what we really have to try to do is as leaders in your building, and you want to use them as an educator to help that piece in your building, say, you know what, here, we have to find a way to bridge that gap for them, to make them comfortable in that environment, because it's absolutely critical in terms of their relationship building with those kids, is that they see them for something other than what they are. And so everybody in the room knows you have the badge, and everybody in the room sees that you have a gun, but what else can you be? And that's what I have to try to talk with my SROs about sometimes, is like, man, that is just what you wear to work. That's not who you are. So we have to talk to them about who can you be inside of a building that a kid can relate to and say, you know what, like, I really like this officer. Here's why. It has nothing to do with the fact that you're a police officer. I just like him because he's approachable and he's cordial and funny and does things that make me laugh. Like, and that's what I tell them. I said, that's who you really become as an SRO. And it's not just a guy in a badge and a gun, right? All right, who else here? Dustin, anything for me? Any questions?
I don't think so. Kind of what everybody else is saying is kind of what we've been through too. I've just been an assistant principal since the 1st of September, so I'm kind of all new to this, but our SRO is always very helpful. And we have 3 in our district. We have 5 schools. We have 3 SROs. One of them's kind of in charge, I think, of the whole district. And then we have one that's kind of here at our school every day. And he's always willing to help and do whatever. I think sometimes it gets confusing on when we deal with like discipline problems is what is administration and what is SRO worthy.
Sure.
We've had that we've had some issues with that, but we've worked through that. We've had some good conversations and those difficult ones we've kind of worked through. And but yeah, I mean, I'm glad to have him. I'm glad he's here, and we're, I think and the kids, he's really good at building relationships with kids. I see him talking to kids all the time, and when they leave school, they might walk right by me, but they tell him bye. So, that's a good, that's what it's good to see that.
So Dustin, tell me where you're from.
Rockcastle County.
Okay. Rockcastle. Yeah. And I knew you guys are just kind of new to having SROs in your buildings. Are you?
We are. Yeah. This is new. And we just actually hired, the 3rd one just got hired like this month. So,
and your superintendent, Carrie Ballinger, yes?
Carrie Ballinger, yep, that's our superintendent.
Yeah, absolutely. Fine people. And I'm glad that you guys are working through so everything's new and remember this too, for administrators in the room, I always tell them this: if it's new to your SROs, it's new to you too, right?
Absolutely, right.
And so like some of those waters that you're talking about where you don't really necessarily know, like you'll know in 3 years from now.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, exactly. Right.
And it's okay to not know.
Right.
That's the thing is sometimes people and cops are bad for this too. I mean, cops are probably the worst for this. A lot of times we want to have an answer for everything, and
right.
Sometimes we don't feel comfortable saying, "Man, I don't know the answer to that."
Sure.
But it's okay to say I don't know, right? I think that it's important for everybody to feel like that.
Right.
So what I would say to you, think about it like this. Outside of your school environment, if that's something you feel as though somebody might get arrested for, then involve them. And I think that you call them down there and say, "Hey, look, this is what I've got, SRO here, man. Like, this is what we're looking at." If they feel comfortable, they'll say, "Hey, man, like, I think this is going to be something that you guys are going to have to hold on to."
Sure.
And we'll back out of this. Now, I'll caution administrators about this too. And this is something that we're going to dive into a little bit deeper, maybe in the KSA conference in the summer, as it relates to like searches and seizures. I want to encourage school administrators to always try to exhaust their search and seizure powers before you involve the police, because once you involve the police, the search and seizure laws change. And so some of those things, like if you involve them too early, you're going to hit a brick wall, because they're like, I don't have enough to get there, whereas you might. And so I want to, and we'll talk about that at KSA, because I think it's something for especially young administrators to understand, is like you can go further than the SRO can. And a lot of people don't understand that. You can go a lot further and you can find a whole lot more. And then at that point, you bring them on the back end and show them what you've got. And when you do that, your cases are going to hold up better in court and that kind of thing. So sometimes bringing them in early is bad. So
sure. Yeah, I understand. I think some of the cloudy, I guess cloudy water that we've kind of had is like when threats are made, things like that.
Yeah.
We had a situation where parents were like, "No, he's not talking to him," like,
sure.
And that got a little, me and Miss Ballinger worked through that together, and we, but just some things like that. 9 times out of 10, parents understand. They want the SRO talking to the student, because it's used as a learning experience,
Right.
But not always. We have had one situation this year that was not that way, but it turned out good. Everything's smooth. But
sometimes it's also important to understand too, when we're talking about charging kids and with particular crimes, the state statutes are what the state statutes are, but it's important to understand that each jurisdiction is going to be limited in what their local prosecutors are willing to prosecute and how far they're willing to go with these things. So for instance, we had an issue yesterday where there was a county in Northern Kentucky that was like, well, how come our local prosecutors won't prosecute for possession of marijuana, but mine might? So that really becomes a localized issue. And so talk with your SROs about that. Talk to them about, is there a willingness? Is there an appetite to help prosecution on these types of cases versus, helping them understand why maybe they're not. And your SRO is going to be able to help walk you guys through that and some of the experiences that they've had in the past in dealing with those crimes. Whereas it might be new to you all, he's already experienced why that they're not willing to prosecute, or there is a willingness. So, yeah.
Yeah, appreciate it. Mr. Tom Atkin, I don't know if you know him, but he's our he's kind of the one in charge, and he does a great job of that. So
yeah,
we're lucky to have him. So
that's awesome, man. That's awesome. John Akers, I see you, my friend. How are you, sir?
I'm doing fine. I had to find my unmute button there. You're doing a fine job, Big Chris. So keep it up. It's one of the best SROs
I
in the
think we're
country.
about. Am I right, Carrie? Are we about done here?
Yes,
and then we get to go
correct.
watch John here.
That's right. I was going to say, I was going to do a quick promo, but you can, give him the nice little promo before we go back into the main session. So yeah, John's going to he's going to help us answer the question, what keeps you up at night? What keeps you up thinking about school safety? And as a principal, I know we all have been up many nights with different things in school safety. So I'm sure he's going to be able to help guide us through that. But yeah, Chris, thank you so much for your work, your service, your leadership. And we appreciate you sharing today and everybody joining the session. And just as a reminder to everybody, is just you want to leave the room, not actually leave the session, so you don't have to jump back into the main Zoom. I've done that a few times, just a little advice, but thank you very much, and hope everybody will join us for our next full session with John.